Good evening. Welcome to the Kelly Wright Show. I'm coming to you tonight from my home in Maryland because of COVID 19. You see, this global pandemic has caused a lot of disruption for all of us, including myself and my family. Out of the abundance of caution, my family's advised me to stay at home. And with good reason, since Maryland is shut down, Washington, D.C. is shut down, Virginia is shut down in terms of closing all of its school systems until the end of the school year and perhaps even longer. So this leads me to my opening observations. It is important that each and every one of us as family members and as friends and loved ones really pay attention to what health experts are telling us. If they're saying stay at home and socially distance yourself, it's for a good reason. That is to flatten the curve, not bend it, and to end it eventually by mitigating this through our social distancing. And then also not to isolate ourselves from everyone, but to reach out and touch each other across social media platforms, picking up the phone and calling a loved one and letting them know that you care. We'll be talking about that throughout today's program. But let me give you some facts. The global confirmed cases right now of COVID 19 are more than 566,000. The total number of deaths are more than 25,400. The US confirmed cases, which now leads the world, is more than 92,000. The total deaths continue to escalate, but right now about 1,300, and that could continue to rise. And these are rounding figures. I'm not being exact because everything keeps changing. And the recovered, those who are recovering, we should make note of that. Those who do recover from COVID 19 also continue to rise. And one important thing, the House passes $2 trillion in the coronavirus stimulus package. The president is expected to sign that and may even do that by the time of this show airing. So having said all of that, here's the thing we must remember, and that is to continue to support each other, to help each other, and lift each other up. This is not a time for division. This is a time for unity. We all have to be unified because we're all in this together. And those are my opening observations. And now, an interview that I had with the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Congresswoman Karen Bass. We did that from my home here in Maryland, and she did it from hers in California. And everyone's talking about COVID 19 and the global pandemic that we're all engaged in. And it is quite a disruptor of everything that we know. And it's broken up our routines, including for my next guest, which is Congresswoman Karen Bass. She is the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. And she is joining us now via Zoom from California, her home state. Congresswoman Bass, I'll start first of all with asking how you're doing personally and how your staff is faring through this global pandemic that we're all facing.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate you for asking. You know, we're all trying to learn and adjust to a new way of working, a new way of interacting with each other. But I guarantee you, we might be at home, but we are extremely busy.
I'm sure you are busy, and it's been very difficult to manage our government. What's your response to the stimulus package that has been passed? Is it enough? Some people are arguing that it is not. Certainly, the mayor of Washington, D.C. is upset that it's not enough in terms of what the nation's capital needed and what she had anticipated.
Right. Well, you would certainly think that the nation's capital would be taken care of, but it's kind of a typical thing that happens, that punitive measures are put on the nation's capital. Overall, I'm happy with the package, but I just view it like one of my colleagues said, it's a down payment. We need to do much more, but we had to do something very, very quickly. So I am happy that the majority of Americans will be receiving a check, hopefully directly into their bank accounts if they filed their taxes and had direct deposit. But within the next couple of weeks, if you make under $75,000, you will get a check of $1,200 and $500 for each child that you have. So I am excited by that. However, if I lost my job, it's great for me to get a check, but what about after I pay my bills? So the idea that we enhanced and raised the dollar amount for unemployment insurance, I'm also glad about that. We provided for food stamps, child care, senior meals, free testing. So there's an awful lot in here that is provided for the American people. After the president signs it, then we're all going to be focused on making sure it is implemented. But that's going to take some advocacy on the part of individuals to call up their city and their county and their state to ask, where are the resources and when are they going to make it to my town?
Indeed, and a lot of people would like to actually converge on City Hall, but they have to do it through social media and social distancing. But while we're socially distancing ourselves, we cannot isolate ourselves either. I know that you're very concerned about foster care. What happens in the wake of this coronavirus pandemic? How do foster children get impacted by this?
Well, absolutely. And so for those numbers, unfortunately, that are in college and the colleges close down and tell everybody to go home, what if you don't have a home to go to? So we didn't make it this time, but we're going to try to get resources in the bill the next time so that those young people hopefully can continue to stay in their dorms. But there's other things that foster youth need. The bill is 800 pages, and we're going to have to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. But many of those benefits that I described in terms of if their incomes are below, et cetera, they can get the check. We are going to have to look into that too, though, because a lot of foster youth are pretty transient, and we have to make sure that they have an address that can receive the check if they did not get their taxes by direct deposit or if they didn't file for taxes. We want them to go ahead and file so they can get that check.
Absolutely. Congresswoman, bear with me. I'm just doing a little technical thing right now. You're watching the Kelly Wright Show. We're taking a break and we're coming back with Congresswoman Karen Bass right after this. All right, we've taken that break. Now, back to the Kelly Wright Show where we're talking to Congresswoman Karen Bass. She is the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. She's been talking about the stimulus package as well as how she is dealing with the coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic. Congresswoman Bass, we were talking about foster care, we were talking about the stimulus package. You had mentioned there were food stamps available. What about the 22 million children who are basically going without food because of schools being closed? Have you been able to, has Congress been able to wrap its arms around that to help them?
Yes, and and that depends on where you are, because in a lot of areas, the meals are still being provided and you can drive by and pick them up. But every area is different. And
Yeah.
this troubles me because, in some areas, the city or the state might see the resources, but might not pass them along to people, which is why I think it's very much my responsibility to make sure that people understand exactly what has been provided for in this package.
You're watching my Zoom interview with Congresswoman Karen Bass, the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. We will return with more from the Congresswoman right after this break. In addition to the package, you have concerns about people who are in prison, for example, and being released from prisons. How do we provide them the help that they need to be sure that if they're released, they're not COVID-19 positive?
So in this package, we provided resources to beef up the health facilities in prisons, but what we did not do was mandate testing. I think there should be mandatory testing for any of people. But the problem is that we don't have enough testing in this country because of the lack of leadership out of the White House in terms of not preparing for this way in advance. We could have prepared the medical equipment, the protective equipment, all of that could have been done. Now we're trying to do it in the midst of the epidemic. So just think about this for a minute. 7 days ago, there were 8,000 people in the United States, 8,000 that had COVID-19. 7 days later, 85,000, a tenfold increase in the number of people that have the infection. So when you're trying to produce testing kits and you're trying to produce ventilators and protective equipment while the epidemic is taking place, that's why we're so far behind. And this was something that was completely prevented. So I do think that when we reach capacity, we need to test people who are in prison because what you're going to see happen now around the country is people are going to start to get released.
Right.
Well, if you have a population that cannot isolate themselves, what do you think is going to happen?
There could be a more of a spread and more of a spike, and it will continue to grow. Congressmember Bass, let me ask you another question more specifically about the African American community, its businesses, and its health concerns, because it could be disproportionately impacted, as you know, by this COVID-19. Can you address that for us?
Sure. And, one of the things that we did provide for in the bill is funding to community health centers. And this is very important to the African American population because many of our areas do not have hospitals, do not have the appropriate amount of health care. And the only place people get health services are from community clinics. So we did provide resources for that. My guess is that we're going to need to do an awful lot more. I know the community clinics in my area are already overrun. In terms of small businesses, you can apply for a small business loan. And by the way, this applies to our churches as well. So you can apply for a small business loan. If you don't lay people off, that loan can turn into a grant. So there are resources, but my job now is to make sure that people know about the resources and that we help people understand how to access them.
How can we on the Kelly Wright Show on the Black News Channel, as well as the Black Press USA, which you understand has launched its own national coronavirus hotline and testing center under the leadership of Dr. Benjamin Chavis, how can we be of service to you?
Well, I think the best way to be of service and we can be helpful with you is to give you in very succinct fashion, these are the things that are in the bill. This is how you as an individual in whatever city you are can access the resources. It's great to pass resources and to pass legislation, but if people don't know it's there, if they say, well, I didn't file my taxes a year ago, so I guess I'm not eligible and I didn't have direct deposit, well, you still might be eligible. Go out and file your taxes. You can still be eligible for that check.
I know you've got to run. Before I let you go, there are just a couple more questions about the all-important census. Now, I've talked to some census workers there in San Francisco, and here San Francisco is under a lockdown situation, and yet they were explaining to me how important it is to get into the lower income communities, the urban communities, where you have impoverished people living there, African American, Latino American. How important is it that we get that census done via the smartphone if we have to?
I mean, the census is absolutely critical because that's how resources are distributed in our country. Now, the census was already going to be difficult this year because it's moved to online. And if you don't have access or you struggle to use your smartphone or you don't have one, then that's going to be a specific problem. So we were already fighting to make sure that we had more resources for the census before COVID-19 hit. And so now under these circumstances, we're asking that deadlines be moved back and that people be given more time because you can complete it online, but if you don't have the ability to do it online, an enumerator, a person will come to your door. But that's not going to happen anytime.
Right. That's not going to happen right now.
It's going to create a problem. But two of the most important things we can do this year, in addition, of course, number one, to keeping ourselves safe, is fill out your census form and make sure that you vote. Life has to continue on, and those two things are critically important, frankly, for the next two generations. How we vote this year is really going to impact our quality of life and our children and grandchildren over the next two generations.
And finally, your concerns about the President of the United States. Has he been a good commander-in-chief on this?
Well, I think that unfortunately our president has provided little to no leadership. A pandemic means it impacts the world. He should have mobilized the world to deal with this crisis. And unfortunately, he has only been able to see the crisis from his own personal vantage point, worrying about his poll numbers, worrying about the unemployment numbers and the economy hurting his reelection as opposed to hurting people. And so what's going on in states right now. States are literally competing against each other for ventilators, for protective equipment. Instead of the federal government being in charge and controlling the distribution around the country, you have California trying to outbid Illinois. That is really shameful. One of the things that happened during the Obama presidency is he had to face the Ebola epidemic. The World Health Organization predicted 1 million people would die. He took leadership over the entire world, mobilized and dealt with that epidemic, and 11,000 people died. Now that's 11,000 too many, but when it's predicted that 1 million people are going to die, and there was one person that died in the United States.
How well I remember those days. Congresswoman Karen Bass, we thank you. I know that you have served in public health before, and certainly you're concerned about those on the front line of this epidemic, our healthcare providers, and they're out there without the equipment that they need. I know that you are continue to do your work to help them get that as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Kelly Wright Show. Anytime you need us or whatever we can do to help, we're right here for you. Congresswoman Karen Bass joining us today, Chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus. Thank you. Russ, thanks for joining us. There's something very special that you are engaged in, and that's calling for prayer.
Yeah.
Tell me what.
Well, at 7:45 Friday morning, of course, we're doing a national moment of prayer. Erica Campbell from Mary will be leading the prayer. And what we're doing, we're asking everybody at 7:45 a.m. Eastern time, no matter where you are, even if you can't listen on the radio, it doesn't matter, that you just say a prayer. It could be a couple of lines, it could be for a minute, because I do believe in the power of prayer. I do think that if we pray in numbers, that we'll get a great result. Because I have, total faith in God, and God is here. There's a reason why all this is happening to us, and I think it's important that we ask God to intervene. And this also calls for us to pray for our leaders, even though we have problems with them. We have to pray for everyone. There are so many people that are being decimated by this virus. And it just seems like the doctors don't know what to do. The scientists, they're just trying to figure it out. And when you have that issue, I think it's time to call on God. And that's why I came up with the National Moment for Prayer. And hopefully everybody will pray all day Friday.
Can we join you in doing this more than just Friday, but just about every day? I mean, I would love to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Because, it was just a matter of getting the ball started. I know we all pray. I pray all day, every day. And, sometimes you forget, what are we praying for?
Right.
And you have to take a look at the fact that we have, I do this thing on my show called, Russ's Rant, where I'm just outraged by the behavior of Donald Trump and the insensitivity, the general disdain for other people's lives and livelihoods. My wife likes to call him the Antichrist, and I'm not going to go that far, but it's just, obviously, our country, the world has been the devil's playground for a minute. Yeah. And it's time for God to, help us out and get him going, because, we can't do it ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with calling on a higher power.
And you notice, I noticed that you said something at the top of this interview segment. You talked about we have to pray for our leaders, and actually the Bible actually instructs us and commands us to pray for our leaders, and it doesn't discuss whether or not we agree with their politics or not. And I think you stated that we have to pray for our leaders even if we disagree with them. And that's where we're at right now. This new normal, which I've described as being quite abnormal, is so disruptive of every category that it sends disruption through the stratosphere. So when you're doing your rant, you're actually letting go of your frustration and you're venting. And that's good to do. But it's also good that we resource the higher power you've mentioned. That's reach out to God and touch Him with prayer. And often said that in this age of social distancing, we should not isolate ourselves from that power of prayer because it does the mind good, it does the soul good, it does the body good.
I agree. I agree. I think that the big thing, Kelly, is that we have a man that is running the free world. And in my estimation, it's okay to be critical because sometimes that might bring about different ideas and concepts of how to resolve our situation. It's just a horrible time right now to have a reality TV star as the president of the United States. The advice that he's getting, the go it alone strategy. I think that God is speaking to us and shaking up the world and saying, hey, you guys are getting out of hand. Whether it's a war in the Middle East or the Saudis versus the Russians or whatever, it doesn't matter. God is trying to speak to us. And he's saying, okay, it's time for y'all to get it together. Because if anything good that comes out of all of this, with all the degradation and the things that are happening, I think the good thing that's going to come out of this, I think that we're all going to unite as humans, because that's what's missing right now. We've lost morality, we've lost humility, we've lost the ability to care for others other than our own, because some people will follow bad advice. And that's what we've been getting. It's just tragic that our leader is doing irresponsible things. And I think that if we can't reach him through the ballot box or whatever, I know God can. And I have my faith that God one day will give him an epiphany and he'll wake up and go, you know what? I'm damaging a lot of people and I do care. But right now he hasn't demonstrated that. So I need help, and we just can't do it ourselves. That's why I totally believe in God, and I think God will handle this.
Russ Parr, who does not bite down on his words. He speaks as he wants to speak.
I mispronounce them every once in a while.
You're welcome to speak any way you want to, and we appreciate you and your show. Again, we thank you for calling the nation to prayer through the power of radio. It's something that I think many people should be doing. And as a show host myself, we're looking and as an African-American man, we're both looking beyond just the politics of it. We're looking in the faith of it. And as you know, one of my mantras is I'm just a brother, a newsman. I believe in the power of the good news in a bad news world. So we got some bad news going on out right there. And I'm joining you in prayer along with Erica Campbell and so many others. I know a lot of entertainers are doing the same thing and government leaders are doing the same thing. We need a whole world to come together.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you, man.
Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate it, man.
Push yourself and come on to this program anytime. You're always welcome.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you for having me.
I'm Kelly Wright. He's Russ Parr. Back with more of the Kelly Wright Show after this. Welcome back to the Kelly Wright Show. And with me now is a good friend, someone that I've admired for many years because of her tenacity, her sagacity, and her faith in getting it done. She is Twyla Garrett. Twyla, welcome to the program, to the Kelly Wright Show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to see you. I know we're social distancing, but it's great to see you. I wish I was in the same city right now.
Yeah, I hear you. We're here in Washington, D.C. Actually, I'm coming to you from my home in Maryland. But Twyla, the reason why we're talking right now is because of this COVID-19 pandemic, and it's the problems that it's causing for people around the world. It's so disruptive, and it's placed you in a position where it's impacting your business. Tell us about your business and all that COVID-19 is causing you.
It's definitely been an interruption and also a game changer, because we know The way we're going to do business is going to be a little different going forward. The odd thing about COVID-19 is that I'm in the construction industry. I own a full service general construction firm, so we can put up a building, but we do right now in Raleigh, North Carolina, a lot of support. So we are on probably around 9 different contracts throughout the state of North Carolina. And majority of those are in the areas that have been deemed in North Carolina to be a hot zone. So over the last couple of weeks, literally definitely the last week, we've had the cease and desist orders and stuff as far as stay in place, shelter in place, stay at home orders. Unbeknownst to me, you know, I'm new to this industry, and the fact of being here for about 3 years, we are deemed essential. Construction is deemed essential, and our employees are a little baffled about how we are essential based on what we are building. And so having that angst of being able to calm the fears at the same time, know that health and safety in their families is priority has been the challenge. And now with the shutdown, we're issuing, literally this morning, issuing paper cards. So if they're stopped on the street, they're arrested, and no one is going to be held, you know, responsible for being out past pretty much the orders of hours that they've asked us to be. So it definitely has impacted a little bit of everything. And then when you look at the supply chain and the payment chain, a lot of the individuals that we are looking to get paid from are not in the office, and they probably can't run those essential checks to get us paid, possibly. So we're seeing a little bit of that on that end, and how that's going to probably affect us in paying our employees in the next couple of weeks. So it definitely is an interruption. If you look around, though, you see cranes and our forklifts, and everybody is still going, and people are baffled. I know when I talk to family and friends, it's like, "You're working?" And I'm like, yeah, we haven't stopped. And they're like, "What?" I said, "No, we really haven't stopped a bit. It's business as usual in construction."
Twyla, that's amazing. Now your employees, how are they responding, and how do you protect yourself when you're out on the job site?
Well, of course, they're responding. I want to protect my family. We just talked to one of our foremen yesterday, and they walked off the site. They weren't comfortable with, we had 3 employees walk off the site yesterday. We are a sub to a main GC, so it's the responsibility of the main GC to make sure that, you know, things are handled. We made recommendations. I know it sounds kind of elaborate, but even, you know, taking temperature checks in the morning at roll call, and possibly taking those in the afternoon when they leave. That way, you know that if anybody is affected or have some type of slight temperature, they're not coming back that next day to infect someone. We did have this week, one of our employees went in, unbeknownst to him, he had strep throat. And so he was in the 4-day of contagiousness of that disease, and he spread it. So, you know, it's definitely one of those things where we want to make sure that our people are safe. I mean, of course, we have PPE. Our PPE don't necessarily protect us from something like COVID. We don't have masks. We don't work with masks. And unfortunately, when you're doing things like we're scheduled to do a fence in Charlotte, well, I can't be 6 feet apart and build a fence, especially one that's 240 feet long to house a gymnasium, you know, back wall. So it's kind of difficult.
We're talking to Twyla Garrett, and Twyla, stay with me. After the break, I want to talk to you about how you became a business owner. You're an African-American woman doing some great things throughout the country. And we'll come back and just share a little bit of your story to provide other women of color and men some insights into what it takes to even make it in the middle of this new abnormal normal called COVID-19 pandemic. Back with more of the Kelly Wright Show and Twyla Garrett after this. Welcome back to the program. My guest is Twyla Garrett, who is a minority contractor. She owns her own business. She is an African-American woman, as you can see. And you've heard me say this before, that Black girls rock. She is beautiful, brilliant, and Black. And she's doing some great things to not only inspire women of color, but women everywhere throughout the world. And certainly, Twyla, your background did not start off so well for you to be doing what you've accomplished today, which is amazing. If you will, just share some insights briefly about the Twyla Garrett story.
Sure, sure. Well, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. That's my hometown. I grew up there in the inner city. I've been blessed to be there, but it was a rough time. I had an abusive mom, and you know, back in the Black culture, you really didn't talk about it a lot. But circumstances came where I was taken from her and put with my dad. Didn't really know much about him. My mom was very abusive in the sense of being, you know, beat and, you know, stabbed with scissors. And it was just an amazing, you know, journey of having someone. But the one thing I did know is that I was almost identical to my mom. Not only did I look like my mom, I had her spirit and I had her drive. And so it was four of us, and she struggled to do what she could do. I tell people all the time, the last time I saw my mom, the last words that she says to me, and I'm gonna, you know, excuse me for cursing, but she said, "You won't amount to shit. You won't be anything, and you probably won't be anything until, and I wouldn't take you back unless you were barefoot and pregnant." And I heard those words from her at 14, and those were the words that actually motivated me. I know some people take negativity and they take it the opposite direction, and what's been a blessing for me is that I was able to take her words. I even wrote a book about it. It's called My Mother's Words, How the Most Negative Influence Was My Most Positive Motivator. And it really was, because I probably wouldn't be here today talking to you. I wouldn't be a business owner with several different accolades and licenses if my mom's words didn't help me get through my last 40 years of living. So I have been extremely blessed. I sold a company, I grew a company into millions of dollars. I sold a company. I'm now in construction and real estate. I'm building an apartment in Ohio. I went back to my city in 2010 and I opened up a huge jazz supper club and hired all homeless and ex-offenders to run it that was in my neighborhood. I just, you know, my whole goal is to tell people you can do whatever you want to do. You just got to put your mind to it. And if you really take those negative things, instead of getting mad about it, use it to influence. So every time I heard you won't, you can't, you wouldn't, I used that to make sure I was like, watch and see.
You are amazing.
Thank you.
Say that, and you're a fireball of positivity and faith and hope and love. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for being a part of the Kelly Wright Show. I know
Thank you, Kelly.
I'll have you back. Just to talk about your story alone, we need to devote an entire documentary to it.
Oh, thank you so much.
Keep on keeping on.
You too. You be safe out there.
And you be safe as well. My guest has been Twyla Garrett, and she is the owner of GMS. Is that right?
Yep, Growth Management Services, GMS.
Growth Management Services. Be sure to check her out. And if you aren't inspired, something is wrong. You got a hole in your soul. We'll be back with more of the Kelly Wright Show after this. Welcome back to the Kelly Wright Show. I'm talking now to Jasmine Gittens. Let me introduce you to her, because in this age of COVID-19 and the pandemic that's disrupting all of our lives, Jasmine, many of us are concerned about how we improve our financial status when everything is dwindling because of unemployment due to the COVID-19 pandemic, with businesses shutting down, people getting laid off and becoming unemployed. We're all concerned about how do we drive our economic fortunes up at a time when everything appears to be spiraling downward. Can you help us out with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. So with an opportunity that people have right now, that's a great opportunity given the situation that we are in with COVID-19 and a lot of people losing their homes, is wholesaling houses. So this is a strategy to get into real estate where you essentially are helping homeowners that are in very particular situations sell their house fast, get them some quick cash, and help them sell their house without them having to, list it with the realtor and pay any money out of pocket. So this is a great opportunity for people that are considering wholesaling, have thought about it, to start now, because, people are unfortunately losing their homes. And in the coming weeks, may be in a situation where they can't, afford their livelihood and maybe losing their home. So as wholesales, we're able to come in and provide a solution for them and actually help them, get out of their situations, help them get some quick cash to do whatever it is that they need to do to maintain their livelihood and protect their families.
Now, is there a chance that by wholesaling, is there any way for that homeowner to perhaps salvage their home? I don't know how that would happen, but is there ever a scenario when you've noticed that a homeowner has been able to salvage a home by following some sort of wholesale model?
Well, I mean, in fact, this is the opportunity if you were in a situation where you're losing your home and, or you lost your income rather, and you're looking for a strategy to build some quick and really generous, significant income, you can actually start wholesaling yourself. So this is a strategy that anybody can begin doing. I mean, all you need is just to get the steps and start implementing it. There's no licensing required. You just literally need to know how to implement it and get started.
For all of the people who are watching the Kelly Wright Show right now, wherever you are around the world, this is one thing you can consider doing in this age of COVID-19, which is forcing us all to stay at home, to socially distance ourselves. But as I've mentioned on this show numerous times, do not isolate yourself from being able to reach out and touch people like Jasmine and I are doing right now through Zoom. And as a result of that, we're learning something about her business, her at-home business, which is generating a generous income flow. So Jasmine, your advice to people in this age of COVID-19 is to what?
My advice to you guys is to take this opportunity to really educate yourself, really get some information that you can implement that will change not only your lives, but actually be able to help the lives of others, and start taking action today. This is a great opportunity, that to kind of change and shift your mindset and take the time that we have available to make a change in your life and others.
Jasmine Gittens, I thank you so much. And how can we reach you again? Jasmine Gittens?
Yes, Jasmine Gittens on Facebook or Instagram, and that's JazmineGittens.
Well, thank you for enlightening us and giving us some hope and some information about how many of us can actually go back to work out of our own homes and have, I like the fact that you say generous income. Hard work, but you got to do it, and we can do it from home with our children around.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Appreciate you so much. Thanks again for being on the program.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
That's Jasmine Gittens. You're watching The Kelly Wright Show. We're back with much more after the break. Welcome back to the Kelly Wright Show. Joining me now is an amazing man that we have followed throughout the years. His acting is incredible. He's Academy Award winning Louis Gossett Jr. He joins us on the Kelly Wright Show. And Lou, we're doing this again because of my faux pas in not recording our initial interview, but I'm so glad you're gracious enough to stay with me here on the program. And let the world know right now what you're going through. We hear about, so many actors coming down or NBA players coming down with the coronavirus. Prince Charles testing positive, Idris Elba, and so many others. Tom Hanks. How are you safeguarding yourself throughout this?
You do the best you can, but you still have faith. I'm not going out there. I go out the door for a couple of 10 minutes to get some sunshine. But I was in a new home, and I wanted to see what it's like. Now I can see what it's like. Me and my animals, and I've got an indoor swimming pool. I've got some stationery. I've got my guitars. I'm really unpacking. I'm moving into the house now, and those are the instructions I get. So I get the first couple of nights I was going bananas. Yeah. That's why that day, if I went to the military and they sent me into a submarine, I would have gone ballistic, to insecure. But all of a sudden, it ain't bad. It's got 5 acres, a swimming pool. The deer seem to like it. They go back and forth past the window. They give me there. It's a nice life. It's new, and when things are new and you get this age, you get a little unsettled. But once again, God is in charge, not me. You got to eventually take that deep breath and communicate the basics. I've been doing most of my life. And you kind of take a deep breath and enjoy it. Take it in and see what kind of lesson we're supposed to learn at this age. The lesson is that we really, really, when we come out of these homes and these places where we've had to be and touch one another, we are much more together than they was when we went in. That's the point.
That's a great point. It doesn't matter what race, what creed, what nationality,
Yeah.
we all come together.
Yeah.
I've often called this disease, Lou, the great disruptor. It's disrupted our lives as we know it. It's taken away a lot of things, but as you just mentioned, it causes us to come together as family, to appreciate our homes. And we realize that some people are lonely, and they should not despair at this time, because it's still a time of each and every one of us, like you and I are doing right now, to reach out and touch each other across social media.
Well, either God is in charge 24/7 or he's not. You know, it's a wonderful story about this town that's about to be flooded. So everybody jumping in the school buses, driving to higher ground. And they go past this house, and there's a gentleman of Sam standing in the door. They said, "Jump in the bus, Sam, because you're going to drown." He says, No, I spoke to God. He said he was going to save me. So now the house is half full, and Sam's got his head sticking out the second-story window of his house, and a rowboat goes by. And he says, "Jump in the boat, Sam." He says, "No, I spoke to God. He said he's going to save me." Now the entire house is underwater, and Sam is holding onto the chimney. And the helicopter rolls the rope down and says, "Grab the rope." Sam says, "No, God said he was going to save me." Anyway, Sam goes to heaven. And God says, "Sam, what are you doing here?" Sam says, "That's what I want to know. Something must have gone wrong." And God says, "Something must have gone wrong, because they sent you a bus, they sent you a boat, they sent you a helicopter." Eventually, we'll recognize the signs that's going to save us. This is a sign for us to be together.
We all need to make some drastic changes. And I would think that COVID-19, the pandemic, might be making us make some drastic changes so that we can reach out and embrace each other.
Absolutely.
Will you stay with me for just one moment? I'm going to take a break. And when we come back, everybody, my final word, and then something special from Lou Gossett and me. Coming back next with the incredible Louis Gossett Jr., Academy Award winning actor, next. Welcome back to the Kelly Wright Show. For my final word, you know what it is. Keep spreading love, freedom, and peace out there. Not fear, but love, freedom, and peace, and never give up on hope. And Lou, in closing the show, I usually close with music. And you've had such an incredible life growing up in a multicultural, multi-ethnic neighborhood. You learned all kinds of songs. Let's close out with "He's Got the Whole World in His Hands."
Okay.
You up for that?
Yeah, a little bit.
You want to start it?
No, you start it. I'll follow you.
All right. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole wide world in his hands. He's got the whole wide world in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got
me, brother.
In his hands, he's got me and you, Lou. In his hands, he's got me and you, Lou. In his hands, he's got the whole world in his hands. You take it, Lou.
He's got the, I don't know. He's got the Kelly Wright Show. In his hands, he's got the Kelly Wright Show. In his hands, he's got the Kelly Wright Show. In his hands, he's got the whole studio in his hands. Thank you, everybody.
Junior, love you, man. God bless you, and thanks for your graciousness in appearing on the show.
Wait for the time when we can shake hands again.
I'm looking forward to it. God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.